Ever notice how some people just seem to hang back? Like at a party, not really jumping into the thick of things.
Yeah.
Easy to just think, oh, they're shy. But what if it's not just that? What if it's, well, something a bit more complex? That's what we're digging into today.
Okay.
That tricky space between, autism and shyness.
Yeah.
We often think they're kind of the same, but there are some big differences that really matter when we're talking about, really understanding and supporting people.
Yeah.
And to help us unpack all this, we've got our expert.
Yeah. Hello.
So where do we even begin with separating these two things, autism and shyness?
Well, the really interesting thing is both of them, autism and shyness, can make those social situations, those parties, feel kind of like, well, a minefield.
Yeah.
But they come from like totally different places in a way.
Right. So break that down. Like, where do we even start?
Okay, so think of it this way. Autism is like a difference in how the brain develops.
Right.
Like the brain's operating system, is about how the brain is wired right from the start.
Okay, so right from the get-go, the brain is processing information differently.
Exactly. Shyness is more like a personality thing. Often it's a mix of your genes, how you were raised, what you've been through. Like it's like having the same computer as everyone else, but you use it your own way.
Okay, I like that. That's a good way to think about it. So it's not just about, like, feeling a little awkward in a crowd. It's
Right.
about how your brain actually approaches, like, processes that whole social situation.
Yeah, exactly. And this is why understanding that difference, it's bigger than just getting the label right.
Right.
It changes how we support someone fundamentally.
That's what I find so interesting, right? You might think, well, lots of people don't love every social situation. How different can the support really be?
Well,
You know?
it can be hugely different. With autism, the challenges often are about understanding those unspoken social cues, that nonverbal communication, that back and forth that so many of us, we just do it.
Right. Oh, that makes me think about, like, even for me, when someone interrupts me constantly in a conversation, it's like, ugh, I can only imagine how much more challenging that is for someone whose brain processes those subtle cues differently.
That's a great point, yeah. They might miss facial expressions, body language.
Right.
It can be really hard to keep up when a conversation, changes direction quickly.
Right.
They're not just feeling anxious.
Yeah.
It's that their brain is like literally experiencing the social interaction in a different way.
So then with shyness, it's more, someone might hold back, but it's more about, like, this is uncomfortable, or people are judging me, or just a lack of confidence in that moment.
Yeah.
It's not that the processing itself is different, it's the feelings about the interaction.
Exactly. It's like two different starting points leading to what might look like, from the outside, kind of similar behavior.
Right.
But that distinction, that's key because it changes how you approach support.
So let's talk about those support differences then.
Uh-huh.
What kind of things would actually be helpful for someone with autism as opposed to someone with shyness?
Okay, so for someone with autism, support might focus on sensory accommodations.
Okay.
Remember how we talked about their brains being wired differently?
Right.
Well, they often experience the world, in a heightened way, or sometimes even a lowered way when it comes to senses.
Okay.
Bright lights, loud noises, certain textures, these can all be super distracting
Oh, yeah.
or even painful, which makes, social situations just that much more overwhelming.
Oh, totally. Like, even for me, if I'm in, like, a really loud restaurant, I get, like, grumpy.
Right, right.
I can't imagine what that must be like for someone with sensory sensitivities, like amplified.
Absolutely. So, creating that environment that's like sensory friendly
Yep.
can make a world of difference.
Right.
And then there's social skills training, but it has to be tailored to their neurodiversity.
Oh,
It's not about making them act neurotypical. It's about giving them the tools to understand those social expectations, those unwritten rules, and to communicate in a way that, feels true to them.
So it's more about kind of bridging that understanding gap rather than trying to force them into, like, a box that doesn't quite fit.
You got it. Now, with shyness, support might look more like building their confidence,
Yeah.
helping them manage that anxiety they feel in social situations,
Okay.
or even role-playing, like practicing how to be more assertive in different situations.
Right. Giving them a toolbox, kind of, to deal with those situations that feel a little trickier.
Exactly. And here's where it gets even more important. If you misinterpret autism as shyness, the
Yeah.
support you offer, it might not just be ineffective. It could actually be, well, not good for them.
Right. That makes sense. It's like giving someone glasses when what they really need is, like, a hearing aid.
Precisely. And this is where those little details we've been talking about, those nuances, They're really important. For example, we haven't even touched on repetitive behaviors,
Oh,
which can be a big clue.
right. Like someone with autism might, that's called stimming, right?
Yeah.
Like flapping their hands, rocking back and forth, or they might need to follow very specific routines.
Right. And it's important to remember those behaviors, they're not just random.
Yeah.
They serve a purpose.
Okay.
Often, they're actually helping the individual regulate their nervous system,
Yeah.
manage all that sensory input or emotional overload they might be experiencing.
Okay.
Imagine feeling totally overwhelmed by all the noise at that party we were talking about.
Right.
For someone with autism, that hand flapping, it might be how they create a little bit of calm in all that chaos.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, so trying to suppress those behaviors without understanding why they're happening could do more harm than good.
Right. Because you're not really addressing the root of what's going on. You're just kind of putting a Band-Aid on it.
Exactly. And with shyness, you wouldn't typically see those same kinds of repetitive behaviors.
Okay. So that's a big differentiator.
It is.
Okay. So we're really trying to get at the why, not just putting a label on someone.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when you understand that why, it changes how you approach the whole thing. You respond with more empathy, more compassion, less judgment, less what's wrong with them.
Exactly.
This reminds me, actually, I was at a conference a while back, and there was this person, really brilliant, super insightful during the actual presentations.
Okay.
But then, coffee breaks, networking time, they just couldn't seem to, relax and chat.
Yeah. It's easy to assume shyness in those situations, right?
Totally. At the time, I was like, oh, they're just shy. But now, thinking back, I wonder if maybe it was something more.
And, it's not always easy to tell from the outside
Right.
because everyone's experience is so unique. Even within, if we're talking autism or shyness, there's a whole spectrum.
So how do we navigate this in our own lives then? How do we approach these situations, where we see someone struggling maybe with a social interaction, but we don't want to jump to conclusions?
That's the million-dollar question, right? I think it starts with observation, paying attention to those little things we were talking about, the nuances, but not trying to be like an armchair psychologist about it.
Right. More about understanding the actual person in front of you and not trying to fit them into a category.
Exactly. And then approach every interaction with empathy. You don't know what someone else is going through. You don't know how their brain is wired.
Right.
Remember that computer analogy?
Yeah.
We might all have different software running in the background.
It's about meeting people where they are, not where we expect them to be.
Absolutely. And if you're ever not sure about something, don't be afraid to ask. Most people, they appreciate it when you approach them with genuine curiosity, respect.
That's such a good point. Communication is key, really. And it just struck me thinking about this. Our assumptions about both shyness and autism, they can actually be hurtful in their own way.
Oh, that's a really important observation.
Yeah.
With shyness, we might just write someone off as, oh, they're quiet. But we're not really seeing the anxiety, the discomfort that they might be feeling underneath.
We might even avoid including them, thinking we're doing them a favor, when really they want to connect, but just need a little extra support to do it.
Right. And then with autism, there's the risk of making it a problem,
Right.
when it's just how their brain works. It's a different way of experiencing the world.
Right. Trying to force someone to be normal when that's not how their brain is set up. That's got to be so frustrating for them.
It's about celebrating neurodiversity, not erasing it.
And it all comes back to what we were talking about before, knowledge is power, right? The more we understand about these different ways of being in the world, the better we are at creating a society, communities that are inclusive, that are compassionate for everyone.
I couldn't agree more.
It's like we're so quick to stick people in these categories,
Yeah,
instead of appreciating what makes them unique.
it's true. And those categories, they come with all this baggage.
Right.
It's almost like we're scared of what we don't get, so we label it, and then we try to kind of push it away.
Which isn't fair to anyone, really, because when we make space for those differences, it's like everybody wins.
Yeah.
We learn new ways of thinking, new ways of solving problems.
100%. I mean, imagine if everyone approached every problem the same way, with the same little social script. How much would we actually get done?
Not much. It'd be so limiting.
Diversity
Yeah.
in all its forms, that's what keeps things interesting, That's where progress comes from.
This has been, I gotta say, a really eye-opening conversation.
Oh, good.
I feel like I have a whole new way of looking at this now.
That's great to hear. I've really enjoyed talking about this with you.
And for everyone listening, we hope this deep dive has given you, something to chew on,
Yeah.
maybe even challenged for you assumptions you didn't realize you were holding on to.
We all have them, right? That's part of being human. The important thing is to be open to having those assumptions challenged, being willing to learn, to grow.
To meet people where they are, celebrate the differences, not be afraid of them.
And remember, in the end, we're all just trying to figure this whole thing out, this crazy, messy, wonderful world.
That's a good way to put it. Well, on that note, we'll let you carry on with your own explorations of this really fascinating topic.
Yeah, keep asking those questions. Keep learning. Keep embracing all the different ways of being human.
Beautifully said. And that's a wrap on this deep dive. Thanks for joining us.